welcome to Live Impact News here in our Live Impact News studio on 13 News Now Plus. It is 1 o'clock p.m. on the dot, January 9th, 2026. We've kind of reached the end of this first full week of January here. We are officially into the new year, and it's been a very difficult start to the new year when it comes to the headlines. There have been multiple stories this week that have grabbed the nation's attention, that have been difficult to talk about, that have been tragic, and that have had massive implications both here nationally and internationally when it comes to the various stories we've been covering this week. Now, none has taken more of our attention than the shooting and killing of a 37-year-old woman in Minneapolis by an ICE agent that happened on Wednesday. It has been the dominant headline for each of our last two episodes of Live Impact News, and community members, state officials, and federal officials continue to talk about this case. More and more reporting continues to come out surrounding this case, and protests throughout the country as well as Minneapolis are ongoing in the wake of this incident. And of course, there have been other incidents to follow in other cities. We will touch on all of that, and we will hear from some of those community members and officials. Most of their press conferences have been pre-recorded from earlier this afternoon. None are live right now. We are going to dive into all of that. The other major story we've been covering has been the situation in Venezuela. Of course, all the way back nearly a week ago on Saturday, the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife were captured by a U.S. military mission in Venezuela and taken back, extracted to the United States, where he pled not guilty to multiple indictments earlier this week on Monday in a Manhattan courthouse. Since then, earlier in the week, an oil tanker that was waving a Russian flag and another tanker, the one waving the Russian flag was in the Atlantic, another tanker in the Caribbean, were both seized, again, by the United States. And just recently, we've had breaking news here this morning of another sanctioned oil tanker seized by the United States in the Caribbean. This is according to U.S. Southern Command, reported by CNN. U.S. troops, in coordination with the Department of Homeland Security, launched from the USS Gerald R. Ford and apprehended motor tanker Olena in the Caribbean Sea without incident, the command said in a social media post. So again, all of these stories unfolding as we speak throughout the week. It has been a turbulent one here on Live Impact News and in the United States as a whole. Now, I believe we will start today actually with a live event, however, that touches on a major story from years ago that is back in the news due to a trial that has begun for a former police officer who was in Uvalde at Robb Elementary School when the mass shooting took place years ago that claimed the lives of a number of students and teachers. This is the trial of school police officer Adrian Gonzalez. He's charged with child endangerment for allegedly ignoring his training during botched police response. 19 students, 2 teachers were killed, to be exact. Investigations have faulted the police response and suggested that a 77-minute delay in police mounting a counter-assault could have contributed to the carnage. Now, Gonzalez has pleaded not guilty, and his legal team says he did all he could to help students. That trial has been ongoing throughout the week, and you see it on your screen here. Now, because that trial is live, we are going to go out to that right now. First, we're going to listen in that courtroom in Texas. But again, we will continue to cover those two major stories, especially the shooting in Minneapolis, throughout the day here. We'll be getting to sound on those stories, but we want to start with our live event that we have up here on our feed inside the courtroom in Texas. Let's go out to that courtroom now, to that trial.
In dry blood with the L scale.
Exhibit 401.
Spent shell casing in blood as well.
Exhibit 402.
It's another spent shell casing with L scale and blood.
And does Exhibit 403 show general locations of the next exhibits?
Yes, it does.
Exhibit 404.
More spent cartridge cases as well.
Excuse me, I have this as Exhibit 403. Okay.
So 32 and 35 are shell casings as well.
And Exhibit 404? That's all. Could you tell us what that is?
That's a spent shell casing with L scale.
And Exhibit 405?
Another spent shell casing in blood with the L scale.
Exhibit 406?
A spent shell casing with the L scale.
And 47? 407, excuse me.
That's in
406 and 407.
There's a spent shell casing with L scale, and there's another casing on top.
And that was 33.
Probably.
Exhibit 408?
A spent shell casing, two spent shell casings, three. There's four shell casings there.
4 shell
Four.
casings there?
Yes.
And 409?
There's two spent shell casings in blood with the L scale.
410?
So overall of the markers with spent shell casings as well.
And this is just north of that hallway wall
Yes.
toward the center of the room?
Yes.
411?
It's a spent shell casing with an L scale.
412?
That's another spent shell casing with the L scale.
Number 413?
That's two spent shell casings with the L scale.
414?
There's three spent shell casings in there with an L scale as well.
415?
There's three rifle shell casings and one pistol shell casing with L scale.
And would you point out the pistol shell casing? Indicating the pistol was fired now twice in that room.
Yes.
Thank you. Exhibit 416?
That spent pistol shell casing.
That you just described.
Yes.
Exhibit 417?
Two spent rifle shell casings with L scale and blood.
And when you say spent shell casings,
They've been
just-
fired.
Just to be clear, that a gun has gone off, powder burned, causing an explosion, making sound.
Correct.
To each one of these cases.
For each one that's been, yes, it's been fired.
Exhibit 418?
Shell casings on top of the desk, marked 34 and 43.
And 419?
The spent shell casing in the box lid.
And 420?
More spent shell casings around the drag marks.
Thank you. And Exhibit 421?
More spent rifle shell casings with an L scale.
Exhibit 422?
5 spent shell casings with an L scale.
423?
The spent shell casing with the L scale.
424, 5?
A spent shell casing with blood and the L scale. 2 spent shell casings.
And 426?
A spent shell casing with an L scale.
427?
Spent shell casing with an L scale.
And 428? Excuse me.
More spent shell casings with an L scale.
I'm now on 429. What are we looking at here?
3 spent steel casings with an L skill and blood.
Okay, I think we're getting off on our presentation. That would be 4:30 that you're on there. That's 4:30. Okay. So 4:30 is 3 spent shell casings
Correct.
and exhibit 431.
Okay, a brief look there inside the courtroom in Texas during the trial for the Uvalde Robb Elementary police officer. Now, we will monitor that throughout the day. That has been live for large portions of our streams all during the week. It's something we'll continue to check in on as it is a trial of enormous national interest. But for now, we will turn back to the headlines that have truly dominated really the country at large and live impact news throughout this week. The shooting in Minneapolis, a 37-year-old woman, Renee Good, shot and killed by an ICE officer on Wednesday. It's something that we have covered at length. I won't go over the details again, but I will note that since then, 2 other incidents that we would like to mention before we get to some of our pre-recorded press conferences. In Portland, Oregon, a Customs and Border Protection agent shot and injured 2 people on Thursday. So yesterday, federal authorities said those people weaponized their vehicle against law enforcement. The incident came after an ICE officer on Wednesday allegedly shot and killed a woman in her car in Minneapolis. Of course, the context that you already know, but the incident in Portland, Oregon following shortly thereafter. We also have a situation in Hartford, Connecticut, where at least one person was struck by a vehicle in a crowd during a vigil in Hartford remembering Nicole Good. Now, this is a situation where a federal vehicle struck a protester. This is according to John B. Larson's congressional page. He is a representative in Connecticut of their 1st congressional district. And according to his page, yesterday, a vigil in Hartford led to an incident in which a federal vehicle struck a protester. So those 2 incidents now following the one in Minneapolis. The incident in Minneapolis leading to protests, vigils, and rallies throughout the country. We also have talked about the situation where we have seen a stark contrast in the way that federal officials, many of whom fall more on the Republican conservative side, have described this incident versus how maybe state officials and community members have described this incident. As far as the state elected officials, many of them fall more on the Democratic side. So in the federal officials' description of the event, their assertion about the event, they place the blame for this incident largely on Renee Good and her actions in her vehicle on Wednesday. When it comes to state officials and many community members, at least community members that we have seen press conferences, rallies, and speeches from here on 13 News Now Plus, they have described the event or the blame for the event more so falling on the shoulders of the agent who shot and killed Renee Good. The video, of course, is readily available on social media. It has been widely circulated at this point. It has played on this station. So anyone can go and watch the vehicle in its entirety and use their own judgment to come to their own assertions. I am simply highlighting the contrast between the 2 descriptions. And we have seen that in the press conferences that we've watched. Those at the federal level and those at the state level and many of the community members in Minneapolis ostensibly have seen the same video or the same series of videos and have come to very different descriptions in terms of whose fault it is and have blamed it on very different parties here. So that is something that has been very clear and very evident in this story going forward. It is something that stands out, how stark the differences are between federal officials and state elected officials in who they blame in the incident as it occurred. We heard from Vice President J.D. Vance yesterday, who spoke at length and repeatedly made note of Renee Good as being in the wrong, if you will, in this incident. Whereas we heard from Mayor Jacob Fry immediately in the aftermath of the incident, the mayor of Minneapolis on Wednesday, where he talked about reckless use of power, something along those lines when it comes to the ICE agent who shot and killed Renee Good. So we will go back to those state officials now. Now, let's make note of the fact that on your screen, you obviously see a crowd gathering. This crowd has been marching through an area that we don't necessarily know, but we do know that this is in Minneapolis. This is a protest that is gathered in Minneapolis following that ICE shooting, and we speak about federal and state officials. We are going to now go to some of those state officials in a press conference that they had earlier today. This is earlier today on Friday. State officials in Minnesota, again, gathering for a press conference on this incident, including Mayor Jacob Frey, who we just mentioned. We just talked about his description of the events, his relaying of the events in his press conference that occurred immediately after or close in the aftermath of the shooting itself. Now, the last time we saw a press conference like this, in fact, in a number of the press conferences that we've seen this week, there has been, for lack of a better word, inappropriate language, right? Or language that we typically would not have on our air. So we'll go ahead and say right now that we want to apologize for any language that you may hear. We are recording these press conferences and playing them shortly thereafter. We are playing them live. Our aim is to not have any sort of graphic language come across the air, but we want to warn you, obviously this is an emotional story, an emotional time here in the United States of America, a time that feels like it could be one of great upheaval. So there obviously is emotional and impassioned language that comes with that. We want to apologize if any of that occurs on our stream today. I certainly have talked enough here for now. So why don't we go out to Minneapolis and listen in on state officials and city officials holding a news conference on the killing of Renee Good by an ICE officer.
In Minneapolis, when a tragedy strikes, there's one word that summarizes what is most important, and that word is integrity. This is not the time to bend the rules. This is a time to follow the law. This is not a time to hide from the facts. This is a time to embrace them, making sure that we're pushing for transparency every step of the way. The fact that Pam Bondi's Department of Justice and this presidential administration has already come to a conclusion about those facts is deeply concerning. The facts that from the very beginning they're calling the victim a domestic terrorist, they're calling the actions of the agent involved as some form of defensive posture. We know that they've already determined much of the investigation, and even if they haven't, there is the appearance that there is some conclusion drawn from the very beginning. If not hide from the facts, why not embrace them? If it's not a problem to have additional people at the table that have a deep commitment to the process and transparency and have run these investigations before, then why not include them in the process? The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension at the state of Minnesota has consistently run these investigations before. They have done so without bias. They've done so with a great deal of expertise. This is not some radical, way out there group. This is a group that is formed by experts who understand how to investigate. Many of them have been police officers themselves. So our ask is really simple here. Our ask is to embrace the truth. Our ask is to include the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in this process because we in Minneapolis want a fair investigation. Is it deeply concerning that this administration from the very get-go is drawing the conclusion that they may ultimately come to? Of course it is. And if you got nothing to hide from, then don't hide from it. Include local experts in the process. We got nothing to hide from here. All we want in Minneapolis is justice and the truth. And speaking of the truth, let me give you another one. I have heard countless people talk about Minneapolis, many of them who have never been here, as some form of post-apocalyptic hellscape, as a place that is dangerous. Well, let me give you a statistic. 50% of the shootings that have happened thus far in Minneapolis this year have been ICE. In other words, we've only had 2 shootings. One of them has been ICE. We are a safe city. ICE is making it less so. We are a city of unity, but ICE is trying to divide us and tear us apart. For every one of the people that you see standing here behind me, they have more than 1,000 people behind them. They have people that are committed to their neighbors, committed to integrity, committed to justice, and committed to getting the truth. We will not back down from it. Among those that won't back down from it is the person who I'm about to introduce. His ward is right on the borderline of where this particular shooting happened, and that is Councilmember Jason Chavez. Would you please give him a warm round of applause?
Good morning. My name is Jason Chavez, and I have the privilege of representing Ward 9 on the Minneapolis City Council, where ICE murdered Renee Good. I want to let you all know that our entire community is mourning because of the inhumane tactics of ICE separating our families, forcing people back into the shadows, and the pure brutality by Immigration Customs Enforcement. The videos that we have all seen, yourself included, does not match the false narrative from the federal government. In fact, you could hear the words, "I am pulling out," moments before ICE decided to take the life of Renee Good. She was a mother, a wife, and a beloved community member, not a domestic terrorist. I'm calling on Trump's FBI to allow the Minnesota BCA to have access to all the information so an independent investigation can occur. It is important and critical to our community to have a sense of trust in this process by having an independent investigation to present to the county attorney so that adequate charges can be made. But most importantly, I am here on behalf of my entire community, echoing the calls to arrest, to prosecute and fire this ICE agent who murdered Renee Good, and to hold those accountable complicit in this crime. What has descended upon Minneapolis and in this state is not the American dream. It is not what the American dream is about. Our immigrant neighbors are here to work. They're here to provide for their family and to achieve prosperity. Instead, what we are seeing in Minneapolis and across this state is ICE kidnapping our family, following folks driving to work and kidnapping them, following people as they're heading to school or to the daycare, picking up our immigrant neighbors from bus stops. While neighbors are struggling to afford groceries, they're picking them there as well. I've personally been on the streets since this first happened, and I've seen too many ICE agents kidnap our neighbors from their cars. And to that, we're always going to condemn it. And as we continue to ask for justice for Renee Good, we're going to ask our community members to stay on alert. As a proud son of Mexican immigrants, I ask Minneapolis and Minnesota to rise up, to do everything in their power to defend our immigrant neighbors, to continue to observe the illegal actions by ICE, to blow your whistle when you see immigration enforcement in your neighborhood, to get trained on rapid response so you can educate your neighbors on what is happening on your block, to provide rides to your immigrant neighbors who need to go to work, who need to get groceries, who need to see their children come back home safely, to help your immigrant neighbors move their cars during snow emergencies, because what we are seeing is many of our immigrant neighbors being picked up simply by moving their cars. To help your neighbors take out the trash, because there are many reports of neighbors being kidnapped while they are taking their trash out. To support our immigrant-owned businesses, to drop off groceries to our children, mothers, fathers, our community members that are starving, and to let know that ICE is not welcome in this city and in this state. And lastly, we're here to demand justice for Renee Good.
My name is Aisha Gomez. I serve as the state representative for District 62A, the south side of Minneapolis, where our beloved community member was murdered this week. I'm so grateful to Councilmember Chavez for explaining this moment to us and calling on us as a community into this struggle that our neighbors are facing. With respect to the investigation into this shooting, there's really only one question in front of us. Are we going to design a process that's legitimate or not? In 2020, the state legislature created the Force Investigations Unit after the murder of George Floyd, which happened right around the corner, 7 or 8 blocks away from where Renee Good was murdered. This unit was established after a long process of looking into what are the best practices when there is an officer-involved shooting. We learned a lot about this in 2020 in Minneapolis, unfortunately. One of the things that we learned is that if you actually are interested in public safety, if you actually are interested in the legitimacy of a law enforcement force in your community, then you must be invested in accountability, in transparency, and in fair investigations when bad things happen. Right. And so that's the question in front of us. Do we want a legitimate investigation that pulls in the professionals of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension who are trained to do this, who have done this over and over, who have the kind of local connections and local legitimacy that the FBI could just never have because they don't have that kind of presence here? Or are we going to have a discredited farce of an investigation? And so as a group of elected representatives who are deeply invested in the safety of our community, and thus in the legitimacy of these processes, we call on the FBI to share the evidence with the Force Investigations Unit at the BCA and have this be a legitimate and trusted investigation. Thank you.
I'm Hennepin County Commissioner Irene Fernando, but you can call me Commish. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a very, very proud child of immigrants. I'm the youngest woman to ever serve on the Hennepin County Board. I'm the first Filipino American elected in the state, and I'm Hennepin's first board chair of color in our 174-year history. My heart is grieving for Renee and her family. This is an unimaginable and preventable loss. I honor Renee's humanity and life, and I acknowledge the deep pain felt by her loved ones and neighbors. The taxpayer-funded actions and harm we are experiencing right now are inhumane, unlawful, and unconstitutional. United States due process means that justice is pursued through legal action, credible investigation, and courts, not through guns, murder, and violence on our streets. There's jarring footage that show ICE agents stage at elementary school bus stops and going door to door. Often agents are unwilling to provide a badge number, a warrant, or any legal documentation. This is a terrifying reality for Minnesotans since we are still grieving Speaker Hortman's assassination due to the impersonation of a police officer at her doorstep. Our community has experienced the national spotlight with law enforcement shootings, which required significant change and reform on how such cases are examined, investigated, and communicated to the public. It is critical for our communities to have some sense of trust in the process in order to meet the standards set by Minnesota law and resident expectations. This is why we're calling on the federal government to cooperate with a joint or independent investigation conducted by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. The thought is that they would do this together, but if for some reason that is not possible, please allow shared evidence for a parallel investigation. The Minnesota BCA is the only nonpartisan state agency equipped to investigate robustly and effectively, in part due to their establishment of the Force Investigations Unit. They have the expertise, they are equipped, and they are ready to pursue justice on behalf of Minnesotans. Alongside their own investigation, the BCA, alongside the federal investigation, the BCA can and should conduct this parallel process, which means full access to the information, evidence, and case file. Because in Minnesota, we expect that investigations are completed by the BCA to then get reviewed by the county attorney to determine if the use of force was appropriate or not. We have a process here to review force. We have full trust in this process and in the county attorney to do the objective review needed based on the facts and Minnesota law. The idea that our federal government would not fully cooperate with the BCA in an investigation creates even more mistrust among our community members, because we know federal investigations are very rarely released to the public. Our justice system and we are here together to ask for and request full cooperation by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office to provide full access to the BCA so they can conduct a thorough, complete, and independent investigation to determine if the use of force was justified or requires additional accountability. Last and certainly not least, just directly to residents, our neighbors, our friends, our family members, our coworkers, our kids. I am very, very proud of our unrelenting courage, compassionate caregiving, and a fierce resilience towards justice. It feels very hopeful and very fearful, but together we can and must resist the urge to give in to the numbness that comes from this type of attention. Because numbing our pain might also numb our shared humanity. And it is only through the collective wisdom in our bodies and ancestral storylines that we will get through to the other side of this. Together, we come from powerful, loving, and resourceful stories. Our cultures and ancestors have found ways to construct creativity from pain, joy from fear, and hope from oppression, and we will do so again today. Ultimately, I do believe that our shared humanity and love for one another will prevail, but that only occurs when we all rise with one another. Leading with integrity, caring for one another with dignity, and fighting for our shared humanity without apology. I and we remain in this fight with you, speaking our truths and leading towards accountability and justice. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I am State Senator Zaida Mohammed. I think I speak on all of my colleagues, especially colleagues in the Senate, when I say we are here on behalf of Renee Nicole Good, a beloved wife, mom, daughter, and neighbor who was needlessly and brutally taken from us in Minneapolis streets on Wednesday morning. That night, thousands of us gathered at the site to grieve the loss and to mourn Renee and to rally for justice. Everything I have learned about Renee, about her humanity and compassion, tells me she would have been there with us, speaking truth to power and turning pain into poetry. This federal government has given us too many reasons to not trust them to do the right thing. There are thousands of agents were sent here under a false pretense in the minutes after an agent, and the minutes after an agent's shot, they refused to render aid. And their leaders have used every opportunity since this tragedy to lie about the facts, to lie about Renee, and to blame her for her own murder. There were many witnesses to Renee's murder, and the horrific videos we have seen make us all witnesses. This was a crime in broad daylight, and the attempt to cover it up is another. Renee is owed the same rights we promise to every American: due process, respect, and truth. We know what we saw, and everything short of a full and an honest investigation is an insult to her memory. Everything she stood for, and everything we stand for as Americans. At 10 o'clock today, we will honor the life and legacy of Renee Nicole Goode with a moment of silence. Every moment before that and every moment after that, we will honor Renee by remembering our neighbor and calling for justice at the top of our lungs. And with that, we will take questions.
So the question stemmed from an answer from a press conference that happened in New York City just yesterday, where it was asked, what is the general process for doing this? Are there legal remedies that are available at the city, county, state level, et cetera, where we would have the ability to move forward with either some form of investigation or prosecution? First, there is some precedent that is important here. There have been instances in the past where there was some form of shooting or an officer-involved killing that took place by federal agents or U.S. Marshals or beyond that did have local and state entities in control. By the way, we're not even talking just about full control here. We're talking about being at the table. We're talking about an investigation that includes the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. And for those that may say that we have a predetermined outcome, we are not the ones that are conducting the investigation. The investigation would be conducted by the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. They are well equipped to do it. They have a long track record of doing thorough investigations and, by the way, coming to results that both saw culpability and a lack thereof. As far as the legal mechanism to do so, I'm not going to jump the gun here and give you a mechanism to prosecute through the county or the state before we actually know what that legal remedy looks like. But I can assure you there is potential there that is available. Go here and then. Well, I think what this does ultimately is expose the truth. What did they say when they came in here? What has this administration stated as their reason for coming into cities around the country? The reason that they've stated, safety, driving down crime. We'll let our statistics speak for the trajectory. They are clearly driving crime up. Up until last night, we hadn't had any shootings in this city other than ICE. Our city is safe. Our city is welcoming. They are making it less so. And so it is a massive issue that they continue to exert their presence in Minneapolis and beyond. By the way, it's not just our city that is feeling the impact. I know that there are a number of legislators behind me that can speak to that. This administration has also said that they're very pro-business. That's also garbage. I don't have a specific statistic other than anecdotal evidence to point to, but they have had a massive and detrimental impact on a number of corridors throughout our city, including like 80% reductions in customer base along East Lake Street and many other corridors throughout the city. And so bad for business, bad for safety, bad for unity, bad for democracy, and bad for this republic. We want them out. Let's go over here and then go over there. So the question is, if there's no full independent investigation of this shooting, what will the effect be? I mean, I think it further undermines trust in government. You know, the quickest way that you erode trust in government is to refuse to enforce and hold accountable people on laws that you pass. There are laws that are around this. There are standards that are around this. They should have no concern about having a full and transparent investigation here. See where that investigation leads. Look at the facts, collect the evidence. And the fact that they are for some reason concerned about having other, by the way, police involved, other law enforcement involved through the BCA, that is wildly concerning. We're not asking to be at the table in this investigation here. We do think that people that have some willingness to see things clearly are. Well, I think we got to get to a point here where we're not trusting everything that they're saying, and I think you guys they're there at this point. I mean, I think he also asserted that because you work at the federal government that you somehow have absolute immunity from committing crimes. That's not true in any law school in America, whether it's Yale or Villanova or anywhere else. That's not true. If you break the law, if you do things that are outside the area of what your job responsibilities require, and this clearly seems to be at the very least, this is great. At the most is what you heard people say back here. This is a problem and it should be investigated. Yes.
A couple questions for you. First, have you heard personally anything from the Trump administration or the president himself? And also, the administration has pointed to some of your comments right after the shooting as turning up the temperature in this city. Yesterday, we did see some protests that, turned volatile at times. There was pepper spray, there was tear gas. Do you stand by your statements to telling ICE to...
Yeah, they stand by their statements. Do you stand by your statements? Yes. I stand by my statements. We stand by our statements. I'll look back to what I said. What I said was it was reckless abuse of power. Yes, it was a reckless abuse of power. I said that what the narrative that the administration was pushing in the immediacy following this shooting was garbage and false and BS. It was. I stand by every one of those. And, this notion of inflammatory comments, I mean, come on, guys. I dropped an F-bomb. They killed somebody. Which one of those is more inflammatory? I'm going with the killing somebody. I'm going to do a couple more, and then I'm sure there's some other people behind me too. Yeah. Yeah, that seems, the way you put it, it's pretty grim. What you just said, and I think, to repeat for everybody, Donald Trump said that Renee ran the ICE agent over. Don't take my word for it. Don't take their word for it. Watch the video from every single angle. I mean, the ICE agent walked away with a hip injury that he might as well have gotten from closing a refrigerator door with his hips. He was not injured. I've seen worse injuries from doing that. And so give me a break. No, he was not ran over. He walked out of there with a hop in his step. And so we just got to get to the point where we're at least operating from, hey, this is we're looking at it on the video screen. This is what we're seeing. Can we all see that it wasn't run over? And then, J.D. Vance, this concept of absolute immunity is pretty bizarre. Very concerning. It's extremely concerning. That's why we're asking for the BCA to be part of the investigation.
We have time for about 2 more questions. Does someone have a question for someone other than my boss?
answer that. I don't know the exact timeline, but I imagine the answer is yes. Go for it.
Jamie Long, State Representative, Minneapolis Representative. There have been instances in the past where the FBI has shared information weeks after or even months after. It would be much better if the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension were able to be involved right now. There is time-sensitive evidence. There are memory lapses that happen if you aren't able to interview witnesses right away. And so they were invited by the FBI to participate in the investigation jointly originally. And then for some reason they decided to walk away. We are asking for their full participation as the FBI intended originally. They were clearly told by somebody that they couldn't participate anymore. And when you have the President of the United States, the Vice President, the FBI Director of Homeland Security already coming to conclusions, and then they are told on the ground that they can no longer be involved with local investigators, that causes a lot of concern. And to us, time is important, but they should be involved in the investigation at any time that they're allowed to be.
So the question is whether I can talk or describe about interactions with Ms. Gooden, who she was as a person. It would be completely inappropriate for me to do so because there are other people that really knew her, and I did not.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
Okay, so local city officials in Minneapolis speaking once again at a press conference about the shooting and killing of Renee Good by an ICE agent on Wednesday, and this story continues to develop. We have more sound on this story that we hope to get to during this live stream in terms of some of the comments from Mayor Jacob Frey and others in that press conference. You heard talk about an investigation. You heard the request from a number of those speakers to have that investigation be a joint investigation between federal agencies and state agencies, or at the very least, if it's not going to be a joint investigation, to allow the state agency access to evidence and materials that they need to conduct an investigation. A little bit more background on that. The Justice Department has blocked the state agencies and their investigations from participating in the investigation into Wednesday's shooting. Federal investigators are the only ones currently looking into or currently being given access to an investigation into an incident that was perpetrated by a federal officer. Again, I will read that statement again. Federal investigators at this point are the only ones who are being given access to all of the materials necessary for an investigation into an incident perpetrated by a federal officer. So that is the situation because after an initial agreement from the FBI to work with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the FBI reversed course and blocked the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension from being a part of that investigation. So that is where we currently stand, and that is where you get requests like the ones we heard in that press conference for an investigation that includes state agencies. They also alluded to the fact that state agencies are well equipped for an investigation of this type because they work within the state on a regular basis. Another comment that you heard in that press conference. I also will note that Mayor Frey said once again that this was a reckless abuse of power, standing by his words from his press conference in the immediate aftermath of the shooting itself on Wednesday, a reckless abuse of power. So that is a few more pieces of context for you in regards to the press conference that we just heard. And again, later in the stream, we likely will continue to cover this story as it is a story that has grabbed national headlines here in the United States for 2 days and counting. The first week of January here. Now, we are going to shift gears in terms of live impact news for the time being. We're going to kind of hone in on Hampton Roads right now. The weekend is coming up. It's a Friday afternoon, which means we got to get a check on the forecast, and meteorologist Evan Stewart is here with us in studio to assist in that endeavor. Evan, how are you doing today? First of all, I know you love Fridays as much as we do.
I think everybody loves Fridays.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm doing great. The weather is absolutely beautiful out there. Get out and enjoy it today.
And you can see it on the
Yes,
image.
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
live
right back here,
image
yeah.
behind Evan right there of the Virginia Beach oceanfront. beautiful, Evan.
Yeah, there are a few folks out there, and it looks like they're, piling up some of the sand. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, it's just off the edge of that.
A little bit of work being done there as well.
A little bit of work out there going on.
This is, are we currently in sort of the peak of this warm stretch right now?
We are. We'll still see temperatures upper 60s to around 70 tomorrow, but we'll see showers. And then we're also going to see those temperatures falling as we go into the day on Sunday. So, yeah, some big changes coming up this weekend. Here's a look at temperatures out there right now. Already 70 degrees in Norfolk, 72 in Elizabeth City. And look at Edenton coming in at 75. And
wow.
A nice breeze out of the south-southwest at 13 miles per hour. So it's making it feel nice and warm. And even across the peninsula, a little bit cooler. Newport News coming in right now at 68 degrees and a south wind at 13. But also notice what those south winds do to the eastern shore. 55 degrees up at Wallops Island. So that southerly wind coming in off the Atlantic Ocean definitely makes it feel cooler.
A 20-degree difference from Edenton up to Wallops Island.
That's right. And, it's one of those things, we always say you just cross a bridge or a tunnel and you get totally different weather. And,
right.
While everybody's seeing sunny skies, definitely a big difference across the area.
All right, so get outside and enjoy your time on this Friday. We don't expect any rain this Friday, correct?
We'll see a slight chance of some showers this evening. I think a better chance of rain will come up after midnight. I'll widen this view out here and sort of show you this satellite and radar perspective. And you'll notice that we do have a system approaching from the west. It's not a well-organized line of showers. So as we go later tonight and tomorrow, it's not going to be sort of this all-night or all-day rain. It's going to be more some scattered showers. I think some of the steadier and heavier rain will miss us just off towards the north and south. You can see sort of Atlanta's in that bullseye there with some of the yellows and North Georgia going up towards Helen and Blue Ridge. They do have some heavier rain there. But that whole system, it's an actual cold front that is just draped off towards the north and west. And, of course, right now we have these nice warm winds coming in out of the south that are helping to warm things up. But we'll get behind this front into the weekend, Sunday especially, and we're really going to see those temperatures take a nosedive.
Okay, so even more reason to get outside, enjoy an outdoor lunch, or if usually you just open the door and you let the dog out, this time maybe put a leash on and go for a walk with the dog, or sit out on the patio tonight with a glass of your favorite beverage and share some outdoor time, because with we're in the midst of winter, so it might be a while before we get this opportunity again.
That's right. Once we get past Saturday, we're going to see these temperatures take a tumble, and I'll show you the graphic that we used yesterday. What goes up must come down, and again, you can see that today we're calling for increasing clouds, 71, some showers tomorrow, and then that 60 on Sunday. That's going to be early in the morning. Those temperatures are going to fall as we go through the afternoon. So much of the afternoon will be in the 50s, and then we'll be in the 40s on Monday.
Can we have a brief pause in the forecast to discuss? First of all, you've been doing an incredible job with the graphics this week. They have been really popping. If you haven't been watching 13 News Now at 4 and 6:30, then you've been missing out on some really fantastic graphics, including this one. I want to know what's going on with the individual atop the Saturday sign.
That's right. I think it's more of just sort of the I don't know what that person is doing. I think maybe it's just more of it's symbolic of the weather for the day.
They've got the umbrella, which speaks to the rain.
Sense, yeah.
Which speaks to the rain, but I'm wondering just kind of where they're headed. It looks like maybe overalls and a red onesie is being worn here with the mittens on. It's hard to tell exactly, but
they're just prepared for the weather for the whole weekend.
No matter what happens, they're going to be out and about all weekend. Maybe they're traveling, so they want to be able to put layers on, take layers off.
I'm thinking they're hiking the Appalachian Trail this weekend.
Now we're talking. Okay. See, myself and Janet Roach, we were on the desk. We were carefully watching your weather report, and a lively debate began about what the Saturday umbrella stranger is up to. We'll have to find out one of these days. But what we do know is they're ready for anything.
That's right. They are. And we're pretty much going to have 3 seasons this weekend. We're going to have spring showers, and then we're going to, and almost even summer, and then spring showers, and then we'll get into more of the winter. Not looking at any snow here, but we are looking at those colder temperatures.
That is awesome. And I mean, you guys know me. I feel like we've spent enough time in this studio doing these forecasts that you know that I cannot wait for spring and summer to get here. So it's been really nice. I've been going for a couple walks around the station just to try to soak in a little bit of this sunshine. And this is a question I was going to ask you. You read my mind. Is it melting? It does look like there's some melting going on with these warm temperatures. Maybe Beach Mountain and Snowshoe are experiencing a little bit of melting conditions. Even Wintergreen, I see a lot of grass peeking out on the hill there.
Yeah, and they haven't had a lot of natural snow.
Okay.
And you can even see right there where those skiers are coming down, where they have the orange fencing, that even the color of that snow sort of indicates that there's not as much of a base there, and that maybe it's, you know, just a little bit thinner. So all of that snow is pretty much man-made, and you can't make man-made snow when it's 54 degrees.
But man-made snow it will melt away just like regular snow.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
there's
is.
no preservatives
You know,
in there.
Yeah, it tends to be a little icier, I find.
Yeah.
Not that I'm this skiing expert by any stretch of the imagination.
I'd give you some skiing expert. You're pretty close to our resident skiing expert, I think.
And you know, up Beach Mountain, you can see where it's raining there.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, and it's 48 degrees, so not doing too well there. And I have skied up at Wintergreen and up at Snowshoe. So again, I've been on both of those slopes before. I mean, it's been probably about 15 years.
Yeah.
But even there in Snowshoe, which is higher, they got their season going earlier. They're usually much colder, and you can just see there that there's not much snow outside of the ski runs. And I've been doing this ski report for the last week or so. I've been watching some of those snow levels. So some of the base has been coming down, I've noticed. And some of the runs, they've closed a few of them. Like I know Snowshoe yesterday or earlier this week had a 60-inch base. And so now they're down to 50 inches.
Wow.
And they have closed some of
chunk
those
there.
runs. Snowshoe, the biggest,
Yeah.
with 61 runs there. And in Virginia, Massanutten and Wintergreen both with over 20 runs. And I know the base there at Massanutten. And let's go back to, you know, we're looking at just a 12-inch base at Massanutten. So if we go back to the ski slope cameras and kind of check out Massanutten again, and, you know, you know, that's where we were seeing even, you know, when the camera shifts back around, we were pointing out that one area by the orange fence that looked a little bit thinner. So, you know, definitely those, you know, the warm temperatures, the rain has done a number. And then over here, that's the tubing run, if I remember right.
Oh.
Or
That's
no,
kind of
no.
nice. They have a tubing run. I do see some snowboarders over there.
Yeah, so maybe it's not. I know somewhere up there is a, or maybe that's at Wintergreen where they have a tubing run. And I don't know. We've lost our Wintergreen camera.
Wintergreen, either we've lost it or it just started snowing hard.
That's right.
More likely that we've lost it, I would say.
Yeah, and head up towards Bryce Resort. You can see it's almost 60 degrees there.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, I guess it's not bad skiing. You don't have to, you know, wear the full-on ski gear.
Yeah, it could be worse. I mean, see, this individual walking here just looks to kind of, she's maybe watching over some of the kids, and she's in very casual, sort of just go to the mall clothes almost.
Yeah, I've seen people in shorts skiing, you know, when it really gets warm. So.
Okay, very nice. So despite the warming temps, the slopes are still very much in action. We got the modern technology where you can make your own snow. Some runs are closed, but as you can see, still plenty of people out and about doing their thing. Look at Snowshoe, it's packed per usual.
Yeah, Snowshoe. Yeah, I've got some of the closer up. Let's see, I've got the Homestead. I haven't checked this camera, and Homestead. Yeah.
Okay, Homestead is no. You're going to need a lawnmower if you want to ride down those hills. I don't think that's you're not going to be doing a lot of snowboarding there. But it does appear to be some precipitation, which actually, and you can see it's wet. Clearly, it's raining based on the tables at the bottom there. The precipitation we talked about Saturday. Are you able to pinpoint more definitively for us? Because Saturday it's going to rain later in the day. What are we talking about?
Yeah, we'll go through that. Here's another location, Winter Place. So you know we got a few more.
Winter
locations.
Place has some piles of snow over there.
Yeah, that's where they usually clear it out. You know, as you're getting onto the ski lift there. So, but you can see even around that that where the sign is that says winter rental returns. can see there's not a lot of snow there at underneath one of the snow guns.
It's cool too because you showed us all of these mountains in the fall time so that we could get a look at the foliage, and then as the seasons progress, it becomes our sort of our ski watch, our snow watch, and we really get a sense of the seasons by checking in on these.
Yeah,
on these
there's
hills.
the right there at the bottom. That's the tube run there at Wintergreen. So
Oh,
I think
nice.
the
Okay.
camera's going to, I don't think that's snow that they're making there, not with the temperatures.
Oh, there's the tubes.
Yeah, let's see if we can. Yeah, we'll time things out. Let's see if we can get a tube run in here or something.
That tube run looks treacherous. Look at those hills.
Yeah, we got some people getting in.
Oh, they're slowing.
Oh,
It's,
did our camera freeze?
it's a little choppy on us a little bit
Yeah,
here.
I think the camera froze a little bit. And, these are live feeds that we get courtesy of resortcams.com. You can go check them out. They've got a lot of other stuff as well. There we go. So they're IP cameras, so depending on how many people are watching, and that affects, sort of the feed and stuff. All right.
Very nice.
Yeah, let's get back to our forecast, sort of time things out here as we go through the weekend with Futurecast, kind of let folks know what to expect here. So this is this evening around 8 o'clock. Again, there could be a couple of showers off towards the north and west. I think, the better chances of rain will come, 11 o'clock, midnight or so.
Okay.
And
so overnight into Saturday.
And even again tomorrow, I think a lot of the heavier rain is going to miss us off towards the north. So especially north of Richmond. So if you have travel plans, again, back towards the mountains, it's going to be another warm day, so that's going to impact.
The rain may miss us. Will it be cloudy and gloomy throughout the day Saturday? Warm, but cloudy and gloomy?
Yeah, and there will be some showers around, 60s to around 70 degrees. And then as we head into the afternoon and evening, a few showers. So not a washout of a day tomorrow by any stretch. And 11 o'clock, still 64 degrees. And that's really going to be our high temperature because by 5 o'clock on Sunday, we're already down into the 50s and dropping back into, the 50s and even, low 50s into the afternoon. So even though it says 60 or, whatever, 60 with a down arrow on the 7-day forecast, that might be little misleading because that high is going to be probably when most of us are asleep.
And that's okay because we know that come 4:25 p.m. on Sunday, every single person is going to be glued to their couch watching the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers duke it out in the wild card round in the NFL playoffs. Naya already told me, don't call her, don't text her, don't talk to her. She's focused on the Eagles game and if they can take down the 49ers. So not a bad Friday. There's not a lot of football being played. One college game. People can be out and about doing their thing. Saturday, a little more football. So you're a little bit, then you head inside. And then Sunday, so it starts to get cold. Lots of football. It seems like we have a really well thought out pattern here by the football gods.
Seems like. Speaking of football, did you watch the game last night?
Unbelievable.
Yes, it was.
That was one of the most exciting college football games I've seen in years.
Yeah, that was an amazing game.
Shout out the ACC. Yeah. Miami's in the title game.
I know.
Miami Hurricanes took down Ole Miss in the college football semifinal. I'm a Virginia Tech grad. Evan Stewart is an NC State grad, so we got a rep for the ACC.
We do, yes.
And the ACC's been taking a lot of hits recently in terms of football.
They have, and there's been a lot of consolidation, obviously, and reallocation of teams and different leagues and stuff. So that's been interesting to watch. Bringing in like SMU and stuff into the ACC. But yeah, it was nice to see the ACC pull out a win, and just the back and forth there in the second half.
Yeah, amazing. All the way through the fourth quarter, and I thought it was going to be a defensive game for the most part. I think Miami's defense is really treacherous, but those offenses were humming by the fourth quarter. And, Trinidad Chambliss is one of the best in the country. And then Carson Beck has had a really up and down career, and he is able to make it happen right at the end for Miami. Just a great college football game. And there's more to come. Tonight, Indiana, Oregon, a rematch of the regular season. Indiana, one of the best teams we've seen in a long time. So college football is heating up a little bit. Are you watching tonight?
I am. Now, who are you going for?
Tonight?
Yeah.
Who do I think's going to win, or who am I rooting for?
Well, both. Why not?
There's no way that my logical brain can go against Indiana.
Right.
They look indomitable. I mean, they've got the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. He is steady. They've got one of the best defenses in the country, a nasty defensive line, and they're just on a roll. I mean, they're cruising. They've beaten, in the last two games they've played, they've beaten Ohio State and Alabama.
Yeah,
Alabama's fallen a little bit, but still, those are the brands right
they're
there.
legendary.
Yeah, exactly. So Indiana went one of the worst teams in college football for decades and decades. Curt Cignetti, former JMU coach, right here in Virginia, and he takes over and turns it around in 2 years. And ultimately, I think I probably am cheering for Indiana as well because Virginia Beach's very own Kalon Black is one of their best offensive players, a running back at Indiana, played at Salem High School. We covered him when he was a running back at Salem here in Virginia Beach, and now he's on the biggest stage, so you'd like to see him get a championship to finish his college career.
Yeah, and Indiana, known as a basketball school, obviously, made famous by the movie Hoosiers and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that the turnaround of the team has just been amazing.
What's an Evan Stewart college football sort of setup looking like? Are we doing chips and dip, a nice beverage, a recliner? Are we going out somewhere to watch the game? Are we FaceTiming Janet Roach and kind of watching together digitally?
No, we're definitely staying in.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm all about. You can't beat a dip.
100%.
You can't beat a dip.
Can I bring something up to you guys?
Yeah.
And we will get back to your
we're
13
so
News Now
going,
weather forecast
this is
very shortly. This happened to
going
us
off the
earlier in the
rails,
week, too. I think that homemade guacamole is one of the Earth's greatest treats. Genuinely a 10 out of 10 food, a 10 out of 10 dip. I think store-made guac is just barely edible. I don't think it's even in the same stratosphere. I think it might be the biggest dichotomy there is between a homemade thing and a store-made thing. Your thoughts?
I think I would have to try a homemade guac because I just got into guac getting it from the store.
Okay.
So I'll have to see what homemade tastes
like. So you like the store guac?
I do.
Oh.
Yeah, there's some good brands.
Maybe I'm getting the wrong one.
I'll have to make some. I make a very good guac.
Okay. And you were saying you didn't like the store-bought because sometimes it has too many onions.
It can be a little oniony. The texture isn't there. It can be a little slimy at times.
You like the smooth guac. You don't like the chunky guac.
I do like chunky guac, but when you get it store brand, it's like you get sort of this smooth gelatinous cube, and then it's got some chunks once you dig into it. Yeah. But it just it doesn't have, I don't know, maybe it's the freshness. Maybe I'm a guacamole snob.
Yeah,
I guess it's possible. I'm a guac diva.
Yeah, tableside at any of the amazing Mexican restaurants that we have here, Tex-Mex restaurants.
100%.
Yeah, that's what you do.
Okay.
No, yeah. Go to one of, there are so many around. So many amazing ones. Get the tableside where they come in and you can tell them, I want extra cilantro, or I want it to spice it up a little bit, put in some jalapenos. That is, that's the bomb. And now I'm really going to go off the rails here.
Okay.
The white sauce that you get with the chips, that's local. That was created here.
That is the legend.
Yeah.
I've never heard if that's actually truly
El
true
Toro.
and confirmed. That's always been one of the great, like when people ask where I'm from. I'm from Virginia Beach. We created the white sauce that you get at your classic.
Queso at first.
You thought it was what?
I thought it was just queso.
Queso's a different thing that is also delightful, but this is a very specific chip dipping sauce.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And do you know what we're talking about, Naya?
I've heard a lot about it, but I have not tried it yet.
All right, we're gonna have to. We've got a whole checklist now that we
we do.
into.
Yeah, I make that too. That's very.
You
good.
make that at home?
I do. Yeah, and it's the old El Toro recipe. It was published in the paper.
Yeah.
A couple of times, and it's Miracle Whip and milk, and some seasonings and stuff.
Yeah.
So a little bit of
we gotta
cumin,
get
a little bit of red pepper. You let it sit for a day or two, and it's better.
Now, Naya, you have won a station-wide cooking competition, right? But that was desserts. Okay, we need a station-wide dip competition. Two-time champion. I did not mean to cut your accomplishments by 50%. Two-time 13 News Now dessert preparation champion, Naya Campbell. We need a dip competition. I feel like you might be in the running with that one.
I got the entree last year.
Oh, you won the entree competition?
Yeah.
Okay.
My mother is from Austria, and her mother was Hungarian, so I made the Hungarian lechó, which is, a Hungarian stew.
Was that the one we had upstairs?
Yeah, that was the one upstairs with the Polish sausage and, different vegetables. What were your desserts?
It was banana pudding, and then it was a strawberry shortcake crunch cake. Yeah.
Can't go wrong with either one of those. All right, you want to get the 7-day forecast of the
We
people who are
do.
still here.
I was like, I'm
watching
like
and
looking up
listening.
recipes over here. We've gone totally off the rails. Listen, it's a Friday. It's been a very long week. Every once in a while, you need to step outside of the headlines,
Especially after this week.
Especially after this week, and just have a brief moment to kind of indulge in the things that we all love, including some delicious dips. All right, let's get the 7-day, and then we'll get you out of here. We know you have a lot of work to do, Evan Stewart.
That's right. So 72 tomorrow. We're looking at the isolated scattered showers, then 60 and falling temperatures on Sunday. Ignore where that arrow is on Monday. This was kind of yesterday's graphic that Tim and I haven't updated just yet. I can actually go in there and do that real quick so that we can get those numbers just right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Give me one more second here. It's going to pop up the wrong one. But yeah, this will kind of give you an idea of what the forecast is going to be.
And I see the arrow there on Sunday because that
67
is misleading.
Yes, yeah, now we got it fixed. So here we go. I don't know what's going on. The computer has its mind of its own anyway. So
it tends to do that.
Yes, so 60 on Sunday. Again, that's going to be in the morning, and those temperatures are going to fall, and then much, much colder as we get there into Monday. Again, we're looking at a temperature on Monday of only 45 degrees. So it is going to be a cold start to the week. And then 50 on Tuesday, 52 Wednesday, and then we're back into the 40s for Thursday and Friday. So the warm weather that we've had the past several days is not going to last. And it looks like much of next week is going to be at or below average. Our normal high is 51.
Okay. All right. So warm weather through the weekend, then it gets a little bit chilly, and maybe some rain heading into next weekend as well. Evan, we appreciate it, as always, both for the forecast and for the random tangents that we tend to take. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, and you can see Evan Stewart, 4 o'clock, 13 News Now, with more on this forecast later on today and maybe some more graphics for us.
That's right, and 6:30. And one other thing, I don't know if you have this on your router, but can we pull up Weather Plus, our Weather Impact 24/7 channel? Because I want to mention that, the folks who are watching here on 13 News Now Plus app, if you click your down arrow, you get the list of all of our live streams, and we also have Weather Impact 24/7. This is another streaming channel. This is it. And we have weather forecast graphics. You can see current conditions around the area and a forecast. Right now it's showing Wallops Island. You can see the rain moving in. And then about every 5 minutes or so, there's a forecast that we update about 6 or 7 times a day, about every 3 hours. So a forecast plays. We have live radar that shows up. So throughout this weekend, you're watching us here on the app right now. Just click in, check out Weather Impact 24/7. It's one of the streams that are here on the 13 News Now Plus app. So that's something that we want to mention, and it is now actually on broadcast on channel 13.7. So,
and you're saying people should do that after Live Impact News?
Of course. Yeah. I'm talking about this weekend when the rain is coming.
Right.
And you can tune in, check out a forecast, check out, the radar.
Yeah.
And we were the station that launched this across the whole company. Our director of technology, Keith O'Malley, had the idea, and he and I brainstormed, and we came up with a way to get that, and now this is something going company-wide. All of our stations, all 55 stations, are going to start this 24/7 Weather Impact streaming channel, and we have more viewers on that channel than some of the larger stations in our station group.
Okay, excellent. So an initiative started right here in Hampton Roads, now company-wide at local news stations all across the country, and our weather team sincerely works very hard to keep everybody up to date. I mean, it is very rapid with the updates. You don't get that very many places. You haven't been able to get that really very many times in the history of news, and now anytime you want, besides 1 to 3 p.m., you can jump on there and click on that 24/7 Weather Impact. Please give it a shot, especially this weekend.
Yeah, but we're doing Live Impact News, so you can get that breaking news, even when we're not on the air. So you're not beholden to, those traditional news times. So we want to be where you are,
hanging out.
Yeah.
Just kicking
talking about guac.
Maybe we'll bring some chips and some dips.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, Evan. You are the best. We appreciate your time on a Friday, and we'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good.
All right, that is Evan Stewart, everybody, giving us a forecast and so much else. Don't forget to check out that other station right here on 13 News Now Plus. Now, I would say that there is something we can do a brief check-in on before we move to some of our more sort of sound that we have gathered through the course of the afternoon. Can we take a look at this protest that is ongoing in Minneapolis right now, Naya? Okay, it is now next to me on the screen. Again, this is a protest in Minneapolis, and we've been able to see some sort of something on the ground at times. Again, we don't know what that is. We're just watching this from here in the studio. We're not getting updates on minute to minute on this protest. We just know that this is a protest in Minneapolis regarding the shooting of Renee Good, the shooting and the killing of Renee Good by an ICE officer. And as you can see, the woman in the front here does have a gas mask on. Some of the protesters have gas masks on. There you see law enforcement officials moving forward, and it looks like maybe they're clearing way for this vehicle to get through. And so it's just something we have been monitoring, and at times it has appeared chaotic, though we haven't seen anything extreme coming out of this situation, but we want to make sure that we are checking in from time to time because, again, the situation in Minneapolis is ongoing. We heard from those state officials earlier today calling for a investigation, a cooperative investigation between federal agencies and state agencies, calling the incident and the shooting that happened earlier today a reckless abuse of power. Not earlier today, earlier this week on Wednesday. Mayor Jacob Frey once again calling the use of force there a reckless abuse of power by the ICE agent who shot and killed Renee Good. And now we see protests happening here in Minneapolis that maybe there's some foul language on one of those flags in the background that we'll see if we can avoid. But there's a gentleman with a microphone there. It is something we will check in on. These gentlemen appear to be, that's a We Heart ICE, so maybe in support of ICE here, whereas we have seen other posters, other flags that are against ICE. So it appears as though maybe there are two different protests going on, or a protest and a counter-protest, though I only see two gentlemen here in this particular crew. It looks like everyone else surrounding them is videographers and camera people. So a situation unfolding in Minneapolis. There you see a protester from the other side, it appears like, trying to take the sign out of that gentleman's head. This woman stepping in and saying, no, we're not doing that. So this is just speaks to the situation in Minneapolis and the fact that it is a uneasy time in Minneapolis. It is a chaotic time in Minneapolis, and this is now back to more signs that you see that are protesting against ICE and against the situation that is happening. And just recently, before the shooting occurred on Wednesday, the Department of Homeland Security sent 2,000 ICE officers and Border Patrol officers into Minneapolis. And it was shortly following that deployment that you had the shooting and the killing of Renee Good. And Mayor Frey, not just talking about what he called a reckless abuse of power by the ICE official who shot Renee Good, but also with very strong language telling ICE to get out of Minneapolis. So that continues to be a story that we will follow here on Live Impact News. Let's come back here in the studio now, Naya, so that we can listen in from one of our state officials right here in Virginia. Senator Tim Kaine spoke later in the afternoon. He gave a press availability to Virginia media, and we do not know if he touched on the Minneapolis situation. We would imagine that he did, but we also know the other big story we've been following this week, the situation in Venezuela, is something that Senator Tim Kaine has been heavily involved in. He was a part of a bipartisan resolution, the War Powers Resolution, that was advanced by the Senate with a 52-47 vote to block the use of U.S. armed forces to engage in hostilities within or against Venezuela unless authorized by Congress. Again, a War Powers Resolution to block the use of armed forces against Venezuela unless authorized by Congress. Senator Tim Kaine, a part of the creation of that resolution, and that passed through the Senate with a 52-47 vote, and he spoke yesterday. Now, before we go to Tim Kaine, we've had another live feed that has popped up, and Naya, this is an interesting situation that we're in because unfortunately we don't have a description of that live feed yet, but it does look like it would provide a stark contrast to what we're seeing elsewhere in Minneapolis with the protest. It looks like a more peaceful scene that is occurring perhaps somewhere else in Minneapolis based on the snow on the ground. We do not know where this is yet. We're still waiting on information, but there is snow on the ground, which is something that we have seen throughout Minneapolis, and this is perhaps a more peaceful scene than we just saw with that protest, where you actually see flowers and people who seem to be mourning, reflecting, observing in this area. I don't see any words that I can make out to give us any more context clues other than that there are reporters there. This gentleman just stepped directly in front of our camera, but I'm sure he's got a lot of work to do.
I saw a sign that said "Justice for Renee Good,"
Justice
so I believe
Renee
this
Good.
is probably the memorial at the scene.
That looks likely based on what we're seeing here. So, we show a clip on one side of protest chaos, two different sides sort of meeting each other in the midst of protest. And so then to show the memorial and to provide a contrast here where there are many people who are still in mourning, reflection, and this is actually a very peaceful scene here. And there you have the side-by-side. Thank you for pulling that up like that, Naya. And that continues to speak to the unrest and the differences that we see across the United States, and I guess maybe the best way to put it is the variety of emotions that a situation like this can elicit, from anger to devastation to confusion. Situations like this create a lot of emotional turmoil all across the spectrum, and that is something that is clear in what we've seen throughout the country since this shooting took place in Minneapolis on Wednesday. Okay, let's now get to our Senator Tim Kaine. Thank you for indulging us as we work through the stream here. 2:22 p.m. We've still got 38 minutes left in the stream. We're going to try to get to as much stuff as possible. I would like to apologize to anyone who feels like I'm simply talking too much. That's always something that we try to check in on. Naya just gave me a look like, yeah, good call, Connor. And yet I continue to talk. Let's throw it to Tim Kaine before I use up any more time. A long week. It is Friday. Let's get through the last 38 minutes of this stream with as much useful information as we can.
Okay, Senator, whenever you're ready.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining in. Just a couple of things, and I'm glad to take your questions. First, we're making some progress in the bodies on moving forward on the remaining appropriations bills. We've got this month-end deadline of January 30. We don't want to have a shutdown. And the good news is, having finished 3 bills in November in that package that I voted for, we have another 3 bills coming over from the House. There's 12 functional areas of government. If we can get the next 3 done, then we've done half of them, and that really decreases the odds of shutdown. So stay tuned on that. Second, we're expecting the House today to act on an extension of the Affordable Care tax credits, extended tax credits, and send that to us. And if that is the case, you'll see us turning our attention to that in the Senate soon. I'm part of a bipartisan group that's trying to work to see if we can find a path forward. Nothing yet to report other than some positive discussions, but we'll see once the House acts. And then finally, today, the Senate voted on my war powers resolution, basically to say we shouldn't be at war within or against Venezuela without a vote of Congress. And many of you know who've covered me since I came to the Senate that this is a real obsession of mine. And I've tried to insist upon the same standard, whether it was President Obama or President Trump term 1 or President Biden or now President Trump term 2. We shouldn't be at war other than military action that's needed in the imminent self-defense of our country from an imminent attack, unless Congress has had a debate and voted about it. And that is both constitutionally required, but it is also based on a very important value, which is we shouldn't send our sons and daughters to war without a debate and vote in full view of the American public that ratifies that the mission we're sending them on and the risk that we're making them undergo to their life and health is actually a valid national mission. And I've been very disturbed over many years, even before I got to the Senate, that Congress has sort of abdicated that responsibility and allowed the executive to initiate war on its own. This action, military action against Venezuela, really began on September 2 with the striking of Venezuelan boats in international waters. It then escalated to the amassing of a huge U.S. naval armada around Venezuela, then to the president's declaration that he had authorized covert action by intelligence agencies within Venezuela, then to the seizure of ships going into and out of Venezuela last week, a very complicated and incredibly well-planned and successful mission, 150 air platforms deployed to come into Venezuela to bomb multiple military sites to extract the president of the country and his wife, thereby toppling the regime, to installing his sort of henchwoman vice president, to seizing the key asset in the Venezuelan economy, which is its oil fields, and declaring that the use of those oil fields and the allocation of revenue generated by the sale of Venezuelan oil would now be controlled by the United States. The president and his team have indicated they will control who is in interim power. They will control when elections will be held. They are focusing on, in their words, westernizing or Americanizing the Venezuelan economy. This is a long-term now, 4-month plus military operation that's claimed the lives of about 200 plus Venezuelans, and that has also led to injuries among U.S. troops who were injured in the invasion last weekend. And my argument to my colleagues is it's time to get this out of the classified setting, the SCIF, and put it before the American public. I know an awful lot about what's been going on the last 4 months, but it's been incredibly frustrating that I can't answer basic questions, even those that I know the answer to, when I'm asked by Virginians. I'm asked by Virginians whose kids are deployed with the carrier strike group, whose kids were deployed out of Langley on the air missions, whose children are part of the Coast Guard interdiction operations. And I'm asked questions about what's the legal rationale, how long is this going to be going on, what's the real goal? Is it narco trafficking? Is it oil? Is it regime change? And everything I know so far, I know from classified settings that I'm not allowed to reveal. So I've been pushing very hard. We shouldn't be at war without a vote of Congress, and that vote needs to be debated in front of the public so the American public knows the stakes. We had the first vote today, and it was a vote on my war powers resolution saying no war in Venezuela without a vote of Congress. And it was a procedural vote, a vote to take the bill out of the Foreign Relations Committee, where it was being locked up and never would have seen light of day under the leadership of my Republican colleague, Jim Risch of Idaho, and instead put it on the floor of the Senate so we could have a debate in full view of the American people. And I'm so grateful to my Democratic colleagues and 5 Republicans who cast a vote and said, yeah, this is important enough now, particularly the president's claim that we're going to be there for years, and that we may also entertain military action against other nations, Colombia, Mexico, Cuba, Greenland, and Denmark, and out of the Western Hemisphere, Nigeria, Iran. This is important now to get out of the SCIF, for Congress to do its real work in full view of the American people and debate whether another endless war is really in our national interest. And so the measure passed by 52 to 47 vote, and that means this matter of war in Venezuela will be the pending business of the Senate. When we come back next week, you might expect to see additional votes, debate, even amendment votes beginning as early as Wednesday. But it's all part of this basic quest for doing things the way the Constitution intended and not putting our troops into harm's way if Congress hadn't had that debate and that vote. I spoke this morning, as I did both of the last 2 days on this matter, but the last thing I told my colleagues before they voted was this, that all of us in the Senate cast hundreds and thousands of votes. We cast a lot of votes. And we're all trying to minimize votes that we would regret. It's impossible to eliminate those votes because along the way, with pressures of time or inadequate information, all of us cast a vote that we, a year or two later, look back on and say, you know what, and maybe I should have voted differently on this, or if I was voting on it today, I would vote differently. That's just a natural part of the job. But the only votes, I think, who that call up real kind of regret that is hard to erase is a vote on a matter of war. And I know many people in this body and predecessors in this body have cast votes about matters of war that they have come to regret very deeply. I told my colleagues today that I could guarantee this: no one has ever regretted a vote saying to a president, please come to Congress before you take our sons and daughters to war. No one has ever regretted that vote, and no one will ever regret that vote. And that was what I put before my colleagues today, and I was glad that 52 of them agreed that this now should be debated and voted before the American public instead of waged in secret. With that, I'm glad to open it up and take your questions.
First, we'll go to Mark with CBS 19.
Hey, Senator, thank you for your time. You know, the man killed in the Minneapolis shooting yesterday was from graduate from ODU, having ties to Virginia. So I wanted to get your comment on that, and also, what do you think federal oversight looks like for ICE? And then the last thing is, there have been proposed talks about a new ICE detention center opening in Stafford, 10,000, seating 10,000 detainees. So I just wanted to get your views on that as well.
My understanding, so on the second question, the detention center, my understanding is that Stafford citizens don't want it there. And the Congressman Gene Vindman from the area agrees with them. And if that's the case, then I would definitely stand with them. Second, the shooting in Minneapolis is tragic. And look, Renee Good, the murder of Good, I mean, could it strike you in the face any more plainly that we ought to reassess what in fact has been done? I watched that video and it was sickening. I did not see an officer who was in jeopardy of being struck by that vehicle. That's not what I saw. Now, I haven't seen all the video. Maybe there were other videos and they all ought to be looked at, but the video that I saw did not appear to be an officer who was in jeopardy. And the firing of multiple shots to kill Ms. Good is something that both federal and state law enforcement officials need to independently and objectively get to the bottom of it.
Next, we'll go to Tyler from WRIC.
My question. Hey, Senator, thanks for doing this. My question was just asked, so in the interest of time, I'll defer to whoever's next.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Next, we'll go to Coulter with WPKR.
Hey, Senator, quick question on the War Powers Act.
Yep.
If it doesn't pass the Senate, or if it gets to the House and it doesn't pass in the House, or if it gets to the president's desk and he vetoes it, what would you like to see Congress do to try to place some kind of control on the president if you can't do it through the War Powers Act?
So, my sense on this one is, Coulter, that the president would likely veto if it gets to his desk. But I was involved in one of these in President Trump's first term. And what I noticed, and it dealt with war, no war against Iran without a vote of Congress. And I noted that after both houses passed it and sent it to the president, he vetoed it, but he actually backed off of military action against Iran for the remainder of his term, because that vote sent him a message that members of Congress who are responsive to their constituents were hearing their constituents saying, we don't want to be in forever wars. We don't want it. President Trump campaigned against forever wars. President Trump campaigned against wars for regime change. And yet that is exactly what he's done. And so I view this vote as sort of holding a mirror up to President Trump and saying, look in the mirror, remember what you told the American public. And I think even the action today, which President Trump is furious about, he and his team worked very hard to get folks not to vote yes on this authorization. And he's even threatening those who did. Get this. The yes votes were merely saying that instead of carrying this out in secret, the Senate should be able to have a full public debate about whether this war is a good idea. And for the audacity of suggesting that war should be debated on the floor of the United States Senate, the president is threatening to campaign against those who voted for my resolution. That tells you a lot about the insecurity of the president, and also tells you if they thought the matter and the way they were going at it was so righteous, why would they be afraid of a public debate. So I think it's really important that we sent that message today that Congress is not an afterthought. Congress is not irrelevant. You can't just bypass Congress, stiff arm them, not include them in these discussions. The framers of our Constitution said we should not be at war without Congress. Presidents have to respect that.
Next, we go to Michael with the Richmond Times-Dispatch.
I have a similar question, Senator. Have you talked to members of the Virginia delegation in the House and both parties about whether this would have any, assuming that the Senate passes the resolution next week, are they going to bottle it up procedurally like they've done with some of your other privilege resolutions, or are they going to have a vote?
I know the Democrats are really pushing for vote on this matter, not necessarily on mine. I think they have their own similar resolutions. But Michael, this just happened in the last 2 hours, and I haven't had a chance to speak with Virginia delegation members. In fact, what we're doing now is preparing for the floor action in the Senate next week, which will likely begin with a motion to proceed to the substance of the bill, and then could include some significant debate about amendments. The last time I did one of these in President Trump, term 1, with respect to Iran, there were 7 or 8 amendments offered by Republicans, and we had to really strategize about which were acceptable, which were poison pills. And so I'm going to really focus on the Senate side of this. If we can get this bill through the Senate, I'll then turn my attention to the House.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Layla with WDBJ.
Hey, Layla.
Hi, Senator. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, so Senator Tim Kaine from right here in Virginia touching on a number of different topics. Let's talk about the topic that he was speaking about just before we came back into the Live Impact News studio, and that is Affordable Care Act premium tax credit extensions. We have been talking about this for a long time because this issue was at the center of the government shutdown that occurred in late 2025, the longest government shutdown in this country's history. Extending those premium tax credits was at the very center of why Republicans and Democrats could not come to a spending agreement for so long. Eventually, enough Democrats came onto the side of voting the spending bill through, and partly in hopes that later on there could be an extension agreement that was found for premium tax credits in the Affordable Care Act. They have expired. I mean, the end of December was the expiration for these enhanced premium tax credits. However, that does not mean all hope is lost. An extension could still be passed even though it already expired. Now, if an extension is not passed at some point in time, millions of Americans will see their health care costs go up, some to an extent where they could potentially not have any health care at all. So, what is the update on this situation? On Thursday, the House of Representatives passed legislation to revive and extend expired tax credits in a bipartisan vote. The tally was 230 to 196, which means that 17 Republicans crossed the aisle to join every single Democrat in voting in support of the measure. Okay, so that has passed through the House, which means it now heads to the Senate. Now, in the Senate, it is not something that is necessarily expected to pass, but again, that is something, that vote has not occurred yet. But a similar deal did not pass the Senate in somewhat recent times here, and so that passes through the House, but is unlikely to pass through the Senate. It would provide a 3-year extension to those ACA subsidies that originally passed in response to COVID-19. The enhanced tax credits passed in response to COVID-19. And again, the Senate defeated the same proposal last month in essentially a partisan vote, close to a partisan vote, despite the fact that, again, 17 Republicans in the House joined every single Democrat in voting this measure through that would extend those premium tax credits. So we await a vote in the Senate, but it is not expected to pass, based mostly on precedent, but we will see. We will see what occurs in the other body of Congress. So that is one of the topics that Tim Kaine touched on. Another that we want to talk about once again is the potential, or the investigation, the recently started investigation into the shooting in Minneapolis, in which an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good, a 37-year-old woman who was in her vehicle driving at the time. Now, That ICE agent has been identified as Jonathan Ross, so we will include that in our reporting here. And we also will once again touch on that investigation, okay? So in that investigation, the Justice Department has blocked state investigators from participating in the investigation into Wednesday's shooting. The initial agreement from the FBI was to work with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, as far as we know, in conducting this investigation. The FBI has since reversed course and blocked the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension from being a part of this investigation. That means access to evidence. That most likely means access to evidence and materials as part of the investigation. So this means, just based on those facts that we have laid out, that federal agencies are the only ones who are investigating a shooting perpetrated by a federal agent. So it's federal investigating federal for now. We've heard now from multiple elected officials, both within Minneapolis and elsewhere, for an investigation that includes the state as well as federal agencies. So that is something that we will keep an eye on, but that is the situation as it currently stands. Now, we've talked a lot about the investigation. We've heard from elected officials. We have covered this shooting throughout our stream here today. We are now going to play clips that involve the community in Minneapolis, members of the community who are looking to live their lives just like we do here in Hampton Roads, and that includes school, education, a massive part of any community. And earlier, members of the school system, as far as we know, members of the school system came together for a press conference in Minneapolis. We're going to go ahead and listen in on that press conference now from earlier today.
Using to open the door, and others are unenrolling their children. Public education's a right, and every child in Minnesota deserves to attend a public school that is safe and welcoming. But that cannot happen as long as ICE remains in Minnesota. They need to leave our state, and they need to leave our schools now. They need to leave us alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next, I'd like to introduce Wendy Marchek. She is the president of the Bloomington Federation of Teachers.
Thank you, Monica. Wendy Marchek, WendyMarczak. Good morning. I am a 20-year employee of Bloomington Public Schools, and I'm currently the president of the Bloomington Federation of Teachers. As educators, we're taught from day one that our first responsibility is student safety. Our job is to protect children and to create a warm, welcoming environment where our students can learn and thrive. That becomes impossible when ICE is stalking your schools. ICE agents deliberately wait outside the school building during drop-off and pickup times, trying to catch parents and take them away. The consequences of those actions are devastating. Everyone is scared and angry. Teachers feel helpless to protect their students. Students are not coming to school. Learning is being lost. Learning every child has a right to. Staff are afraid to come to work. Some educators are staying home because their own children are afraid to go to school. Families are turning to online schooling out of fear that their children may never see their parent again. Students are crying because they don't know if they'll ever see their friends again. The children are afraid, the adults are afraid, and we are trying to hide it. But teachers feel defeated. They miss their students, they worry constantly about families, and they ask themselves, how do you teach in an environment like this? We train for school shootings. We do not train for our own federal government to terrorize children. Ask yourself, would you want your child going through this? An entire student body is being traumatized by witnessing ICE activity around their schools. When ICE operates near schools, those schools feel under threat, and that is unacceptable. In Minnesota, we value education, yet right now, the federal government is scaring students, families, and school staff. That makes one thing painfully clear. Our children's safety and education are not being treated as priorities. If they were, ICE would stay away from schools. Stop using our children as pawns, stop terrorizing families, and stay away from our schools.
Thank you, Wendy. To close, I would like to once again urge everyone to join us in the statewide Day of Unity by taking some time to help your neighbors, participate in community actions, and joining in the moment of silence at 10 a.m. to honor Renee Good. I would be happy to take any questions at this time.
So when you talk about ICE agents showing up outside of schools during pick-up, drop-off, can you give us some examples of like what's happening? Are they going up to students, or walk us through what that looks like?
So we've heard various things from across the state, from ICE agents standing close to school grounds during drop-off and pickup to circling the school properties. I don't know if anybody else would like to add some things, but Wendy, would you like to
add a little bit?
Yeah.
Our school, Valley View Elementary School, has been hit significantly. 142 kids didn't come to school yesterday, and we're just a tiny elementary. The ICE agents, one did pull into the parking lot, and they know they can't, so they were asked to leave. But they stand on the other side of the street. Our schools are in neighborhoods. So we know they're there, the teachers know they're there, and they are circling. And it was a family that does attend our school, their kids. They were not home, and we found a way to keep the children safe. But that's just one person, one family. Our teachers are literally following the buses home because they don't know on the other end if there's going to be a parent or not. They're literally shopping and buying products, everything that they can do because people don't want to leave their homes. And the students, all the students are suffering. They don't know the next day if they'll have a friend or not. And the teachers are just, they're scared. They want their kids back, especially their special education teachers. So that's just an example.
And then you mentioned an example, I think, about pepper spray.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you all saw a couple of clips, whether it was social media or on the news. Yes, they were at Roosevelt High School. And the force that we witnessed, it was sad. We need ICE out of Minneapolis and out of Minnesota ASAP. Look at that video. It will break your heart.
I have a question for the gentleman from St. Cloud. Your representative is Representative Tom Emmer. He has spoken out in support of ICE and these actions. Do you have any response to that?
Tom Emmer, certainly has gone in line with our federal administration on many things that are wrong, in my opinion. And he's not representing our St. Cloud area very well and the needs of our students, our families there. He certainly has, been at a place that, I've tried to have conversations with him, and they're way different than what we believe that is best for our students. And, again, he's wrong in many things that he's done along the way. So, yeah, he's not good for us.
Can you give us just figures to numbers with the districts that you guys are a part of? And I know I'm familiar with Minneapolis being one of the largest in the state. Where does St. Cloud fall again?
We have about 9,000 students in the district, like 14, major school sites and a few other, smaller school sites. But we have students that, it's a pretty large district, geographically. So we do cover a lot of area. And we have students that come in from all over central Minnesota to attend our schools. We have a great school system and something we're very proud of. We'd like to keep it that way, but we've been growing too. Every year we get 200 to 300 more students. So.
Bloomington Public Schools has about 9,600 students. We have 2 high schools, 3 middle schools, 10 elementary, an online school, and an early childhood center. We also have a community ed building where many of our families' parents attend. Anything else?
They already know about Minneapolis.
And like, yeah, we don't.
I think overall too, you mentioned the videos from Wednesday, and you mentioned that you have seen clashes between ICE agents, educators, families before. What is the breaking point for you, and what made you want to hold this press conference today?
Thank you for that question. Our educators cannot do the job that they were hired and trained to do because Minnesota's students are not in their classrooms. We wanted to make sure that everyone knew that our students, our staff, our educators are safe, have a place to go to learn. And that was the reason for joining in this Day of Unity, for having this press conference. We urge Minnesotans to stand behind our families and our communities. Our students deserve safe and welcoming schools.
Do you know if any of the federal agents have taken any students or families since they really ramped up this week?
So as far as specific students, some things we're hearing and we're trying to gather and disseminate the correct information. There's a lot of social media posts. There was a student yesterday that was detained at the Target after working at the Target in Richfield. I contacted, since that's my home district, I've tried to contact folks. I heard that he was a student of the Richfield Public Schools. I cannot confirm that because I have not had confirmation on that. That was just from social media posts. But we are hearing from families, from educators, that students are scared. They have had some confrontations, but to actually confirm and get all this information right now amidst all the chaos has been difficult because a lot of those families then want to protect their students and their children and make sure that that they're safe.
What exactly would you do if ICE tried getting into one of your schools? You've mentioned that they've been on school property, they've parked in parking lots. What if we get to a point where they come knocking on the door?
We have implored all of our unions across the state and the school districts to have protocols in place. We need to make sure that what ICE is doing and these federal actions are lawful. So there are sites that will make sure to have a protocol, like go to the district office, have staff come into those sites if ICE does try to get through those doors. And again, there are things that we can do that are to protect our students, but we also understand that if ICE comes with a federal warrant, we will honor that as best we can and make sure our students and our families are safe.
I can add one thing.
Yeah, thanks.
In St. Cloud, our superintendent, Lori Putnam, has given us some direction on what to do if we do have federal agents doing something at our doors. Have given us some clear instruction on that. We've had some training on it, and that's an unfortunate piece that we've had to train around that. It's time that we're taking away from developing curriculum and working with kids. So what we've done there is we will direct those agents to go to the district office, and we make sure that all of our doors are secure as usual, but we just have to we're on alert when kids are outside for recess, if they're doing things bus duty, when we're outside, we're always looking. And that's just such an uneasiness to it that we're always have to have our ears turned around, wondering, who is that person over there that's around our schools. But we do have protocols in place, and we will legally comply. That's been the directive as well, that we will do that, to the best of our ability.
Are there cohesive plans, like between all the schools, or have you been forced to create a plan individually? Is that something you guys have all discussed together?
I think the superintendents across the state have probably reached out to each other to, work on some common plans. Our superintendent didn't share that with us, but they do on a lot of issues that they try to have some similar plans. But it also depends on the school district and where they're at and what sort of things are happening in that school district. We like to have a lot of local control in what we do, so there's times that we don't always agree. But.
This is my last question for you guys. We saw that Minneapolis Public Schools are allowing remote learning for families that want it. Are a lot of schools across the state considering that? Is that already in place?
So we know Minneapolis has made the decision based on the needs of their students. MDE.
Okay, so a chance to listen in as educators in Minnesota talk about their situation when it comes to their schools. And I know that that's, very specific to, it's something that us here in Hampton Roads, they're talking about their school system and their situation, but it serves as a reminder that we are seeing the situation play out in Minneapolis in real time. And for a lot of that time, we are going to see protests, rallies, speeches, press conferences, and that is extremely important. And we are going to bring you every single piece of information that we can, especially as it happens here on Live Impact News. And it is worthwhile. But it is important to remember that underneath the surface of that unrest is a community of people who are trying to live their lives just like we are, and whose lives have been, in some ways, upended by a horrible tragedy, a devastating set of circumstances that have occurred in their city. You can imagine for kids in this city how scary it is to see a member of their community shot and killed, to see what is now happening throughout that community in terms of protests and rallies, perhaps the gravity of the situation with school being canceled for kids in those communities. And so it is something that we want to make sure we continue to try to lend context to and perspective on as we continue with our coverage. And we will do so as long as this story requires it. And based on what we've seen this week, it certainly seems like a story that will stretch well into next week and beyond. 2026 has certainly begun with a turbulent start here in the United States of America. But to end our stream, we're going to come back here to Hampton Roads, and we're just going to have a look outside. It has been, especially the last 3 days, have been long and difficult. And that is the situation that we are in. And it is the situation that we want to exist in as it needs, as it requires, so that we can bring you guys the information that you need. But it's important as well to look outside every once in a while, especially in times like this, and especially on a day like this, where the sun is shining and the skies are clear. Now, such is the nature of Live Impact News, that just as we look outside to see the beautiful skies and clouds throughout the area, one of our live feeds has popped up with another major event that requires our attention. And that's okay too, because again, all the information you need when you need it. Naya, do we have time to show what we are seeing on our live feeds, which is what we are told is a meeting between President Donald Trump and oil executives at the White House? Naya Campbell got that up extremely fast. We appreciate you for that, Naya. And again, the president of Venezuela, captured by a United States military mission, extracted and brought back to the United States, entering not guilty pleas earlier this week towards a number of indictments against him in a Manhattan courthouse. And now President Trump meeting with oil executives, as we've heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio earlier in the year about how the United States will be selling some of the oil that is located in reserves in Venezuela. And then he says using that money to to help Venezuelans. Now, this is another story that we will continue to cover, one that we covered earlier today when it comes to Senator Tim Kaine and what he had to say with his War Powers Act. So we get to look outside for a bit, but then it's back to business, and it'll be more business on Monday right here on Live Impact News.